بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Dear brothers and sisters, welcome to our program Real Life and Education. Today we will discuss about one of the most important subject or session or topic, which is how to overcome crisis. Talking about crisis means talking about the issues of this crisis, finding a solution of it, how to manage this crisis. Therefore, I'm so glad and happy to introduce my two guests, starting from Dr. Mohammed Belghiti. Welcome. I know it's very important, this subject, and it is so hard to talk about it.
Sure.
You're welcome. And on my left, as usual, of course, Professor Rashid Mimouni. I know you've got that much to say about that. You're welcome to.
Thank you.
As I said, talking about crisis, it is talking about how to manage this crisis. And this crisis has too many different solutions and issues. For that, we need to be very attentive to manage this crisis, not just inside of economy or social, but in all sides, starting from ourselves and going on to our societies. Managing crises need competence. Managing crises need experience. Managing crises need tools. To do so, we have to get a good plan or adopting a new philosophy. This new philosophy, it is not just for ourselves, but it is for ourselves and for the others. To have a trust on what we're doing, to have a confidence. I'm not going to be so long for that. I will try to define the crisis or managing crisis with my two guests. I will start from Professor Rashid Mimouni. I will say, how can we determine the crisis? What do we mean about it?
When we are speaking about crisis, الأزمات, which is a frightening word. We are speaking about a situation because the normal situation in society, within groups, is that this society has to have a certain level of integration of its members on different stages, educational stages, on the family, organization, civil service organisms, on the different instances. They have to be converging towards maintaining this society, economic activity and so forth. And when to have certain, according to the changes which are happening due to internal factors or to external factors, the capacity of adaptation on society is on groups have a sort of resilience. Resilience يعني نوع من مقاومة الحفاظ على الذات, because those societies have got goals. They are based on goals, principles, values, and they want to transcend and transmit those values to its members. When it happens, when there are different terms to speak about crisis, crisis is a sort of situation when people, individuals, groups are in a situation when they could not cope with the situation, could not adapt, could not realize the principal goals. And we have to mention that crisis is not coming straightforward like that. Mainly, it has causes which are working progressively, and it's going to phases. Okay? Then we say that, for example, it is complex because it is including various sectors. There are many sectors that may conduct to the crisis. It's not one factor. Usually there are many factors. Alors, there is what we are calling at first a dysfunction. That is something which is not functioning correctly in one space, in one activity of the society. Then, if this dysfunction لا تكيف أو عدم الوظيفية,
maybe non-adaptation.
low adaptation, yeah. For example, it comes to what Durkheim, the sociologist Durkheim, seule anomia. It is one of the special situation of a crisis, which is inadaptation of the value system. That is, يعني اختلال المعايير. يعني values as completely disruption of values. And then we come to the crisis, when the crisis is when there is a standstill. يعني tension is going to its utmost, and then there is a necessity to overcome this crisis. Alors, women, maybe societies and groups are facing during their lifespan a series of difficulties, problems, which if it not dealt with properly, are going to find the capacity of innovation, of adaptation is not important, derived to the crisis with its negative aspects. How to deal with this? Alors, how to understand changes that are put a series of interrogation questions. How can we understand changes that are occurring progressively, and that our previous education, our experience capital is inefficient to deal with? This is a crisis. When تجارب السابقة are not efficient to deal with the crisis. How about if the causes of inadaptation of crisis are not stemming from our responsibility? Yani as individuals, as groups, they are overwhelming. They are spreading into society, not under control by the different instances that cause. How about when they are causing despair to individuals and to groups, deviation and renunciation to take part in the global values of the tree. What are the solutions, the predicaments, attitudes to cope with the crisis? This is what they are going to speak about, or partly.
Inshallah.
Maybe in addition to.
Now I've got definition our definition of crisis when we talk about crisis.
Yeah.
The definition is that crisis is defined as a dangerous or unexpected threat to the goals, of value, beliefs, and property of individuals and nations and organizations as well. When we talk about, you were saying the crisis is some things to do with if I did understand, you're saying it's out of the individuals, as Durkheim is saying. But I will say it is sometimes can be out of, but the first causes is the individuals themselves. So they couldn't deal with the problems, with all the problems. For that reason, when we talk about crisis, as definition, it is the unexpected. When you unexpect.
I think crisis. There are expected crises and there are unexpected crises. Crisis, in addition to what has been mentioned by our professor, crisis is when we are confused. What is the right attitude we should take, and what is the real position where we should be to achieve our goals and our targets, right? So when we are in crisis, we are overwhelmed, and we do not know what is the right behavior, conduct, attitude we should follow. That's why because crises are expected and unexpected. There are natural crises and there are artificial crises. If you want, I use these two terms, right? A natural crisis, there are so many. There can be earthquakes, there can be diseases, there can be pandemic, there can, right? And artificial things which we have done with our hands due to our ignorance or due to our transgression, ظلم. Sometimes we are the cause of some crisis.
Can we have
either at the level of individuals or level of our society.
Right. Can you give a sample?
Transgression, done in any way, right? When there is transgression, we can be the cause of crisis at the level of individuals. There are crises which are at the level of individuals, like psychological crisis, for example, الأزمات النفسية. There are social crises. Maybe there are ethical crises, where as Professor Mimouni highlighted, where values and criteria are disturbed or confused, right? When we do not really have a criteria when we want to evaluate a situation or evaluate people or evaluate any event, for example, right? So this is how we should make what we mean by crisis, أزمة. Crisis, they can be at the level of individuals, they have their own causes, and at the level of societies also, but in many times crisis, the main characteristics are مفاجئة, unexpected, right? Violent,
sudden crisis,
violent, complex, the complexity. Why it is a crisis? Because it is complex to find solution for it. We have faced the pandemic situation in the previous 2 years. I think, inshallah, we are overcoming the situation, right? Crisis increases the level of fear, الخوف, زيادة حالة الخوف. Crisis installs a climate of confusion among the societies, among individuals. Crisis can destabilize confidence between people, confidence between the members of any society, right?
Trust.
Yes, and a level of trust. And we have seen many examples during the pandemic situation, right? So there are characteristics of any crisis. The main characteristics are those, right? So that's why we need to give today, inshallah, tonight, a vision, clear vision, not only how to face crisis, because sometimes we talk about how to face, but it is how to overcome, to avoid. Developed countries, right? They are prepared. They are prepared how to avoid or to overcome crisis at any level, right? Right. And underdeveloped people, right? They are people who meet face to face with crisis And as Al-Hasan al-Basri said, Al-Hasan al-Basri, the famous scholar, said, al-fitna, crisis, is known by scholars in its beginning. الفتنة يعلمها العلماء إذا أقبلت. Any crisis, scholars and experts can prevent crisis before it happens. But the ignorant people, they know only when the crisis is in the end. Right?
Yes.
Oh, it was a crisis and we didn't know. It was a fitna and we didn't know.
Well, when we talk about the Masirat al-Anbiya, when we talk about our prophets,
biography of
our prophets, and even the events that time, the events happening that time with our prophet, or the time of prophets, especially when we talk about Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he is the one who overcomes a lot of crises.
Maybe before a prophet, we can go deeply in the historical events. The prophet Noah has overcome the crisis of floods, right? Al-Gharq, and the Quran. The Holy Quran gave us what the Prophet Noah has used to overcome the crisis of floods, and how was the attitude of people at that time, and how they were able to overcome the crisis.
And he knew that what is going to happen, the flood is going to happen, and even that time the people thought
later on the prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, overcome the crisis faced by the Egyptian people,
the economic crisis,
the economical crisis, and he gave us, the Holy Quran gave us the details how the prophet Joseph overcome the crisis by giving maybe we will go through what were the steps he followed to overcome the crisis, the economical crisis, for example.
Well, in same ideas we're talking about the crisis, but now I want to talk about how can we manage the crisis. And the word managing,
yes,
when we try to explain the word managing, in Arabic say idarat, and we've got this discipline in our universities, discipline of risks managing, idarat al-makhatir, and especially when we talk about idarat al-makhatir, risks managing in the side of natural risks, natural crisis. You are talking about it, and in the other side, the artificial, if we can say artificial, but I would say الأزمات المفتعلة,
man-made fake crisis.
Man-made crisis.
Yes.
Well, in that side, what can we say about how can we manage our crisis?
Well, I think crises were dealt with at a certain time. But we speak about crisis at the individual or social level when there's an abrupt transition, انتقال سريع ومفاجئ, from one state to another. If we take third world countries, including Algeria, we found that the main rhetoric after the independence was about tradition and modernity, development and underdevelopment. Then we went through a process of edification or uprising, development, and the process was going on the industrial, maybe rural, industrial, economic side, educational side. Then individuals were integrated in this process. Then at that time, all the words I can make a census of the books at that time. Tradition contre développement. Siman Madhar rahimahullah. Développement contre sous-développement. Others about Algerian experience by Jamal Gharid rahimahullah. There were others about identity, because they were creating a new problematic, a new conception, and they were tackling certain problems. What are? Because at that time, what we were living, this process ongoing was a linear process, and sometimes it was tried to reduce all instances, mainly traditional instances related with culture. They were not very much considered culture, religion, and things like that. But when the process of development reached a difficult point due to international conditions, obsolescence of the industry, and so forth, then there were a social crisis, and then there was an
individual
cultural crisis, maybe a global crisis. Yes. And the individuals couldn't find the different options at that time. And this is why, and at that time we can say in Europe, there was, I don't remember, Ulbeck or Beck, who wrote a book which is Society at Risk, the Society of Risk, Sociology of Risk. يعني علم الاجتماع المخاطر that was not existing in our time. Yes. Because even in Europe there was this, how to deal with this thing. Alors, at that time we say that if we go to this society, what is development? And it was increased now with globalization. With globalization, which is globalization of economic. That we are not living in autarcy. Autarcy, that means in an economy which is existing by itself. We have economic relations with outside, and prices on all things is determined by the markets, international markets. We are living also a worldwide network that values, way, attitudes, cultural trends are overriding our culture, overriding our media, our values, our traditional society. And we are living about, even the state is deprived from some, how to say, important economic and devices. Then at that time, what has happened? The crisis is, for example, that there is increasing gap at the economic side. There is what, if we say, for example, groups are economically isolating itself. We are in our society increasing what we are calling, due to these different models of aspirations or models of conduct, what we are calling maybe micro-societies, micro-societies, مجتمعات مصغرة. Even each one, it's not a whole society. There is a main society, but maybe مجتمعات مصغرة, its values, its way of conduct among themselves and others, on trying to impose to the global culture its values and things like that. At the individual crisis, at the individual example, I want to enter maybe about the family, dysfunction within family, distinction about culture. I would say one thing. For example, at crisis at the individual level, let's say you're a young person, it may be triggered by the fact that the individual is in a confusion, as Professor Belghith mentioned, of the vital choices. In a traditional societies, choices are clear, are linear. Then there are confusion between traditional, new value system, not only modern, postmodern, and there are choices he has made which are proposed by different instances, on whose finalities, ways of conduct may be distant and often contradictory. And this, the moral principles of education aims conflict inside him, stresses the person, the youth, and if he chooses any option, it has a very big cost. For example, he wants success in life. Now it is success in life through money, through economic success. In society, in your careers, that may impose you to, it is your dilemma, it may impose you to sacrifice some ethical principles. You may have some ethicals you have to sacrifice. But if you abstain to play what they call the social game that are prevalent in this situation, implicit rules, you may fail to succeed. If you don't reach this opportunity, you will be out of the game, get out of the situation, isolate yourself, and get in a deep social, economic, family crisis if you have no resource on economic. And furthermore, you may fall in a deep psychological depression. Then this is crisis at the individual level, because opportunities, there are expectations, you try to find these expectations, rule of the games are disturbed, you cannot reach, and you find in this situation. And this is what is important. Later I will speak about fitna, because as a social scientist we have a different conception of fitna, because religious persons are speaking about the fitna, but have to define what is the fitna. This is another important thing.
And, when we talk about crisis, there's the modern management of crisis has set a number of steps to overcome, as we said, to overcome the crisis. And these steps, I found as example that you gave already about the Prophet Joseph alayhi salam. And Joseph alayhi salam, he started to inform his people around him, the people who were around him, is like working by team, or finding a work team or teamwork for or teamwork to find solution for the crisis of economy. And this is what he did. And after that, he chose the time. The right time trying to find a solution for the crisis of economic crisis that time. I will let you more explain.
Maybe I have a different vision in trying to help our audience, our brothers and sisters, to overcome the crisis we are facing in our life. Well, I think society is, in this era of globalization, we cannot ignore that societies are different in dealing with the crisis they are facing. Right? We as Muslims, we believe that we deal with any crisis from three points which are very important. If the crisis is not due to our ignorance, right, or due to our way of transgressing the orders, it is a trial, a divine trial, ibtila, right? We believe that any crisis, either at the individual level or at the social level, it is a trial, ibtila. وَنَبْلُوكُمْ بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ فِتْنَةً وَإِلَيْنَا تُرْجَعُونَ. Fitna here means a trial, imtihan. an exam, if you want, in this life. We look at any kind of crisis in this way. That's why. Why?
I think
because
the exams is the only exams that you've got the answer before having the exams.
Yes.
See?
So why? Because any society, they have their own referees, their own values. So that's why we are different in looking at the crisis. A Muslim should be strong enough in facing crisis. Why? Because first of all, he refers to the Almighty Allah, without neglecting other things. Maybe I'm going to mention, in a way of summary. I try to summarize, right? So Professor Alexis Carrel, who was awarded the Nobel Prize in Science of Physiology, has a book in French language, Réflexion sur la conduite et la prière. Right? He wrote this book talking about how prayers and how worship in religions strengthen the psychological, the spiritual side of any human being in facing the difficulties of life.
Means the impact of the spiritual.
Yes. And the Holy Quran mentioned 14 centuries ago about this. As-salat, prayers strengthen the believer to face any difficulty in life, and the believer takes it as a trial from the Almighty Allah Ta'ala. Well, it doesn't mean that we neglect other things. The Prophet Joseph in the Holy Quran warned the Egyptian people that they are going to face not an economical crisis, but a drought crisis. فترة جفاف طويلة جدا. As we are facing today, a crisis of drought. We are facing. We should know how to deal with it, right? The Prophet Joseph gave to the Egyptian people, how are we going to overcome this crisis? First, planification.
Plan, yes.
Organization. Organize the Egyptian people. What does it mean to organize people? That means we guide them, we orientate them how to be disciplined, right? Because the disciplinary level of society will really help in overcoming any crisis. Al-amal, hard work, قال تزرعون in the future tense means تزرعون means you have to work very hard. تزرعون سبع سنين دأبا. دأبا means continuously. A hard work of 7 years in a non-stop process.
Means you have to be patient.
Right? تزرعون سبع سنين دأبا. Fourth step in facing to overcome this crisis is الاقتصاد وعدم التبذير. Avoiding any kind of wastage. Right? Where فما حصدتم فذروه في سنبله إلا قليلا مما تأكلون ثم يأتي من بعد ذلك 7 شداد. Difficult 7 years. يأكلن ما قدمتم لهن إلا قليلا مما تحصنون. You have to know how to stock foods, products, to avoid the experiment, how to avoid these products to be expired, right? مما تحصنون, the word تحصنون here means how to preserve, how to protect production, storage, how to provide a very good way of storage to avoid any kind of spoiling these products, agricultural products. This is all in the Holy Quran during this planification of the Prophet Joseph, peace be upon him, right? Then I think the most important thing here, this is how Prophet Joseph overcome the crisis with the Egyptian people, right? Dhul Qarnayn. If I take another example from the Holy Quran, how Dhul Qarnayn faced the problem of Yagog and Magog, who were spoiling the earth, who were spreading corruption on the earth. قال ما مكني فيه ربي خير فأعينوني بقوة أجعل بينكم وبينهم ردما. The prophet, Dhul Qarnayn, either he was a prophet or not, this is a discussion between our scholars, right? So Dhul Qarnayn gave to the people who referred to him to help them, to assist them, what is his methodology in facing this kind of crisis, and how he is going to work by stages to overcome this crisis.
And to stop the destroying of
the corruption of Yagog and Magog, right? So we have the example of Noah, how he overcome the crisis by developing industry. Now,
yes,
if we want really to overcome any, let's say, pandemic crisis, health problems and crisis, we should develop the industry of medical tools and right, and medical studies, and to develop our laboratories, our production of medicines, right? The Prophet Noah needed to produce a ship or a boat to save the life of his people. He has produced it. ويصنع الفلك كلما مر عليه ملأ من قومه سخروا منه قال إن تسخروا منا فإن نسخر منكم كما تسخرون. Right? So developing industry, developing agriculture as the story of Joseph, right? تزرعون, agriculture. So if we want to overcome crisis,
just a minute, and to do so, you have to know how to use your competence, how to use your experience, and how to use your knowledge.
You touched a very important point. Who is the Prophet Joseph? He was a competent person.
Yes.
قال اجعلني على خزائن الأرض إني حفيظ عليم. Trustworthy and knowledgeable. If we always appoint a competent people, leaders in their positions, right, the process or the procedures of overcoming any crisis will be successful. 99% will be successful.
He was a chief of treasures, if we can say that.
Yes. He was the Ministry of Finance. He was the Ministry of Storage, something like that. But he was very successful in helping the Egyptian people to overcome the crisis of drought and economical problems.
And we found his experience at the end of the crisis, when he was having the way, and pointing the way of.
But I think
I
think this success is not due only to the competence of the prophet, of the leader, for example, but it is also due to the quality of education and learning we have provided for people to help them to increase their level of awareness and disciplinary behavior, and the way how society should deal with the leaders in disciplined way, in highly developed way of an attitude towards overcoming the crisis together.
Right. In the same way, how can we manage to find the interesting or the important factors in a management of crisis? Or if we say risks crisis. Today we need to talk about risks crisis as well, because everything got his own risk. Now, how can we manage on that risk?
Well, if we think there are two sides to the process. Maybe I want to revert to one thing before, one step before, is about how did we arrive at this crisis, Alors, we have some religious advices which are about, for example, in the Quran, it is mentioned that we have to keep with upright, do good, follow the ethical values, and avoid certain behavior that are disrupting the consensus, social consensus, are making people confused, and they are this gap, social gap or economic gap that existing between groups, poverty, despair, psychological despair. For example, in the Quran, it is said that in many verses that الترف, يعني the luxury consumption, rich, arrogant, who are, يعني when they are controlling the society, corrupted people probably, on every who are doing any non-economic action for their own self, are disrupting the social contract. They are creating trouble. For example, there is on the intellectual side a tashaddud, fanatism, religious restriction, is creating trouble. Then when we are facing changes like modernity in our societies, at the independence we were facing this, we want to have the good predicaments, good advices, good specialists towards the problems of economic. You, Professor, mentioned, for example, Sidna Yusuf. At that time, he was the expert. Now we have disciplines. Yes. Okay, to this. Resort to expertise. Right. We have to resort to expertise. Or even in the Quran, اسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون.
Sure.
You should.
Professor Mimouni, I think we need to talk about the complementarities of disciplines.
Yeah.
The complementarities, because when we talk about crisis, the crisis is not just in economy or social. The crisis starts from the moral of the people. The crisis starts as well from the ethics of people.
Yeah.
The crisis starts, for example, when we were talking about the economy or the trades or commerce or whatever we call it. This is start from the psychology of people. Start from ourselves.
It is.
Start from the religious side. Allah Azza wa Jalla was talking in the Holy Quran about israf, about tabdir, wastage.
Yeah.
People today, they waste too much.
Yeah.
If we take this side, and this comes from where? Comes from the ourselves, from the
definitely.
Sure. This is what happening.
Those individuals and groups
this is what is happening.
Are maintained under control by values, and they fructify these values. They live with it, transmit it if it is operating. When the social control or changes are operating, and we are situations out of control, then we are reaching this situation. For example, it is very indicative that, for example, the Islamic World Bank now, the World Bank is encouraging an economic based on Islamic principle, based on exchange, based on fruitful negotiation, not on usury, ليس على الربا. And this is adapted to our societies now based on تكافل اجتماعي. products related with social solidarity. And this is at the international level. For example, the directress of director, the Lagardère, she is a French economist who is the director of the FMI, World Fund, is encouraging Islamic banking. It's not the Muslims themselves.
Because they
knew that the experience has showed them that now neoliberalism is creating huge gaps between people. Even to reach medicine in this pandemic way, there is a gap. There are societies which cannot get treatment, medical treatment, and this is why. Then, if we take this, we take that we see that values were not validated in our society, or were diminished, not considered as fruitful, and they were considered by other international instances. If we turn to the family, for example. In the family, is a dysfunctional family? It is a dysfunctional family is when there are difficulties within families, where there's confusion of roles between man and husband and wife, between children, what attributions, what rights. There are difficulties, economic difficulties to found a family, and this is triggering what? It is triggering misconception, incomprehension. It is triggering maybe tension. It is leading to violence. Violence is leading to abandoned children. There are no ethical behavior within the family, maybe and so forth. Then what is the solution? We find we return to our religious principles, but now they are mediated with other situations. What is the role of a wife? What is the role of Qiwama today? What is the rights of children and wife today in a new setting of the family with new aspirations, and what we are saying that we can use new methods, new techniques to restore the family balance within the family. Family therapy, for example. What is family therapy? It is to help individuals to understand the situation in the family, nurture development, and form of treatment to solve the family problems. We have this even in Islam. In Islam, we have predicaments which are related with, for example, mediation by aqarib, by relatives. When there are difficulties in the family, we are reaching high levels of divorce. And this is due to this. We can use positive psychology, which is discover and strengthening the personal strength or potential in each one, in the children, in the parents, in order to reorganize this. There are, for example, new tools we can use. They are not contradictory with the predicament of Islam, which is based on mutual comprehension, respect of spouses, fidelity, faithfulness. Infidelity is leading to the disruption of the family, and respect of everyone, the gradual dealing with the children in order to develop these capacities and things like that. The same thing which we may speak about maybe identity crisis. Why with worldwide globalization there are problem of identity crisis? We didn't leave this before, and so forth.
Well, we just want to talk about the solution, but we're referring our solutions to our prophets. all the prophets.
I think.
Alayhim salatu salam. Talking about Noah, talking about Joseph, talking about Jonas, alayhim salam, all of them, they passed by crisis. They had crisis. We talk about Noah alayhi salam when he was praying Allah, and he said when he really, was disappointed from their people.
There are so many things we should learn from.
Because we've got only 3 minutes.
Our reference and our values and our Islam, right? But in these few minutes we cannot really. But there is a civilizational rule in the Holy Quran. The Holy Quran says, "Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim."
Yes, He wouldn't change.
Allah will never change the situation of any society unless they change what it is in they change themselves, they change their souls, their inside, right? Ma bi anfusihim. So the strength of any society depends on the strength of their people, of the members of this society. If the members are weak in faith, in trusting the Almighty Allah, right? If they are weak in industry, in agriculture, in developing education, in developing knowledge, right? They will never be able to overcome any crisis, right? If they are not united, if they are selfish, what does it mean unless they change themselves? They change themselves in trusting the Almighty Allah. That means He is the all provider. We need only to do hard work as the Prophet Joseph has done with Egyptian people, right? And also we need to leave bad behavior and attitude like selfishness, like speculation, ihtikar. Al-muhtakiru mal'oon, the Prophet said, the one who speculates products and he sells them when they become more expensive.
Monopoly.
Doing
monopoly.
Monopolization of products is cursed by the Almighty Allah Ta'ala. Mal'oon wal jalibu marzuq. So speculation, selfishness, and usury and stealing people and cheating in trading at different levels, right? If people, members of this society are like that, this society will never be able to overcome any kind of crisis.
I think even talking about society, we'll talk about the individuals, about the people.
Sure.
The people, when they misrespect to each other, the people who doesn't avoid, as I said before, the wasting or the wastage.
Yes.
All that will take us to where? I will let you say.
Yes, I just want to say that one of the what we say, for example, now we need new sort of culture of environment, culture of sanitary, as you said. What is more important is that we have to capitalize on gain experience from our crisis. We are not just like that.
To avoid,
for example, to repeat it, like it's happening with the pandemic.
Our team and the head of this session or this topic is very upset because he let me more than usual. I will say thank you very much to all of you. Thanks to watching our session, our topic, and just stay with our channel 5. And I will say to all our team, starting from my guests, and all on my back or behind our audience, I will say thanks a lot. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.